Shalom Aleichem. And now we learn the Sikha Chelek Yud. And the Sikha is Parshas Lecha, number 2. It's a fascinating Sikha. And it talks about why each child that has a bris is called the Bris Shel Avraham Avinu. It says regarding the Tzivah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Avram to circumcise himself. We call him the Rosh Lamulim, the first of the people who got circumcised. That's what Psikta, the Esther Rabbi calls him. And the first one has the covenant. And we say in each bris, because he gave to each of us the power to enter the bris. And what's the Yerusha, the inheritance they gave us? That's irrelevant to the child, what situation they are. 1 day-old child inherits everything from the father. And that it's not a Shini Rishus, it doesn't change from one possession to another because it's the Yerush comes into the place of the person who gave them the inheritance. So when we say Bris Shel Avraham Avinu, we mean literally that we, number one, got it right away, and it's exactly the same thing. We are like the Moirish, we are the Yerush. Says that, but we have to understand because the Rambam writes in Pirush HaMishnayos that we don't have a bris because Avraham Avinu had a bris, but because Hashem told us through Moshe Rabbeinu. So even though we get the koyach from Avraham Avinu, nevertheless the mitzvah, the way it's given to each and every one of us, is not a continuation in the Yerusha Bris Shel Avraham Avinu. It starts with the tzivah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe. So why we call it Bris Shel Avraham Avinu, especially the way the Medrash explains, and something that's explored in Chassidus a lot, that all the mitzvahs that the Avos did are leichas, they're like smell, that it's not tangible, but us, Shemer Torah Shmech, it's like oil, in other words, we have it. So we see that there's a mile in our mitzvahs over the way they were done by Avraham Avinu. Just like shemen is stronger than the actual smell of just shemen. So why is it that our mitzvah is Bris Shel Avraham Avinu? It's even greater. And what does it mean by Bris Shel Avraham Avinu? It should have said the Bris Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why Avraham Avinu? It's a covenant. It's not a covenant with Avraham. It's a covenant with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says that ever we can understand this by introducing the words of the Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch that Tchilas Knisas Nefesh, that the beginning of the entrance of the Nefesh Elikis is by the mitzvah of Milah. Now the Chorah we understand, even while the baby is still in utero, they learn the whole Torah as the Gemara in Nida tells us. So we obviously have a Neshama Kedosha over there, and the Rebbe says in the footnote, even Adarabah, he's in a greater level when they're in the soul because there's no Nefesh Bahamas in utero, because there's no Nefesh Bahamas to cause problem. So how can we say that the beginning is when it comes to bris? Says the Rebbe, when we say beginning of entrance, we're not saying coming in, we're saying integration. Chibur pnimi of the neshama and the guf. The neshama starts getting integrated in the guf and becomes one. Because then you see that the neshama and the guf are actually, the neshama is impacting the guf because they're alive. However, when it's still in utero, even though they have a neshama, the neshama is not doing much because it's living off the mother, whatever the mother has. And even after a person's born, that the nefesh comes in and gets combined with the guf, you don't see so much nefesh al-kis. You only see the nefesh achiyunis, the element that gives life, but you don't see the spirituality. When do you see in the guf the public expression, the revealed expression of the combination between the shama and guf? After by the bismillah, b'disi b'sachem in the flesh. Something that anybody could see technically. So this is the mila of mitzvah milah and the other mitzvahs. This is what mitzvah milah has that no other mitzvah has, because all the other mitzvahs, their job is to combine the person with HaKadosh Baruch Hu who's doing the mitzvah. But you don't see the combination, the chibur, the binding between Hashem and the individual within the human being. A hand that gives tzedakah, even though it definitely affected somewhat the hand, you don't see it. Milah, you see it. The whole point of milah is that you should see le'enei basar gamlu musaylam, that dagei tayin. And this covenant of Bila is even greater than the covenant that the Yidden had b'chayrev in Sinai and other times of covenants, because the covenant that the Yidden had with Sinai, or just before they came into Eretz Yisrael and Avri Smoyav, was people not only who were there in the Guf, but even in the Shama, all the people that were living forever, us, Asher Yeshna Perveshinen, for the people here and the people not here. And Pirkei Rebbe Lezer explains that this was all future generations, every neshama that would ever be. including Ger. And even the people who were there, the covenant only happened with their ears. Even though Taka went in their ears and they can understand, but the ear is just a mechanism of hearing, but it doesn't change tangibly. However, this, it's in the basar, in the guf mamish, the most tangible, in Kabbalah called Spirit Hayesod, the Avraham Bris, the organ, and it's literally in a tangible way, in the ultimate tachton shein lamata mimenu. The limb in which all the tivus are in, and a person even will release, go to the toilet, like the ultimate love. And that's the point of mitzvahs milah. When a child is 8 days old, when there's no intellectualism or nothing, just because there's a neshama and the neshama is alive, he cannot come into technically into an awareness of a bris between HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what Torah says, give a bris at this age, because the whole point of the bris is that the gashmis should feel it. And this is dafka by a child of 8 days, and the Rebbe says even more so, because it has nothing to do with anything else other than the basar hakashmi. And that's why we say Lech Avraham Avinu. The Rebbe quotes from the Sefer of Nachum Mendel Haradak, who was a Talmud of the Magid and the Rebbe of the Alter Rebbe, who writes in the Sefer Pliya Adetz that the Maila of the Nisayan of Akedah of Avraham Avinu, even though many Yidden throughout history, unfortunately, had to be Moshe Nefesh, and Moshe Nefesh, their children, and Taka do it Propel Mamashon like Avraham Avinu, and we don't say that such incredible Mailas. That's because, so in other words, what's the big Maila of Avraham Avinu? That he was the first. And to be the first is always the hardest. He paved the way for everybody who follows after him. Says the Rebbe, but when did he pave the way? That's only in something of awareness. In other words, once we know that Avraham Avinu did it, we're able to do it. Says the Rebbe, but when it's talking about something that has nothing to do with awareness, it's done with a guf into the person's guf without any awareness. On the contrary, they're 8 days old. So you can't say, oh, he's getting inspiration from Avinu. He's not getting inspiration, he has no idea. So over here, he's mamish the rishon. Says the Rebbe, the truth is, even by an adult who takes milah, even though they have awareness, because the whole point of milah is to actually take the basar gashmi in the to make a covenant, like we explained. So in the actual bris, there's no difference. The fact that Avraham Avinu had it already, the actual cut it's like the first time it happening. So says the Rebbe, then the sinas kech, the energy, the gift that you got from Avraham Avinu helps you to get in the spiritual mindset, but the actual bris not. L'chora, based on that, you would say that a person who's Moshe Nefesh and kills himself the same way, because at the moment that they're getting killed, Avraham Avinu's thing doesn't make a difference. I'm not sure about that. But the point is, everyone who does a bris, it's like the first one. And that's why we say, Lachnisa Bavisa Shel Avram Avinu, because we're like Mamish, like Avram Avinu, that we're the first. And according to this, we could explain another thing, why it's important that a bris, that there should be a tsar, pain for the child. Especially Simcha, so important, Iblis Hashem Simcha, so why do you have to do something at tsar? And even according to some opinions, that's why you're not allowed of anesthetic, etc. According to halacha. And that's, by the way, why you don't make shechiyanu by a bris, because it's tsar. Now, l'chuda, fine, it's the nature of the body, but why did the Eibishter create it in the nature of the body? Obviously, everything comes from the source. Why did Hashem create it in the nature of the body that it's sore, that a bris hurts? It's a kavanah. And the Rebbe adds over here the point I just said, that especially according to the opinion of the Achronim, that it has to dafka be tsar, and therefore you cannot put anesthetic, etc. What's the point? It says that mitzvah smil is about bringing a likus into Gashmias the way Gashmias is. The way Gashmias is, the body has pain. So in order for it to feel that's mamash Gashmias, you do it within nature, and therefore you don't change anything. And dafka in a place where in the body, with the level of tsar, in that limb, that's how you create a covenant by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Interesting, the Rebbe brings regarding a ger, the mitzvah, the milah is not a mitzvah, it's only hechsher, because the mikvah is actually what makes them the 100% yid. So therefore they're allowed to get an aesthetic, because by them the milah is not a mitzvah, but rather a hechsher, to prepare them. And what's the lesson from all this? The Alter Rebbe writes, a person has no right to hurt himself. It's halachi, not allowed. And we're definitely not allowed to look for things pain. However, when it comes to the Shlichus to make a dir with Avtzon, not only do we not, we're not allowed to prevent the pain. In other words, you have the pain, and you do what you have to do. So when you have a Shlichus, you can't sit there saying, is it easy, is it hard? The Rebbe says, Adam Karvitz al-Atzma, a person's too close and biased, and we might start delaying and make issues. A person has to do what the Mishalech says, and when they give themselves over to the Mishalech, then they have that Tzlacha in the most incredible way in Dira B'Tachtonim. And this Sikha was said on the day of this, of the Fidik, that Yud Tes Tammuz Tavshin Lamed Beis, 1972.